promotion. How did you get your start in CCW?
I got my start in CCW. That was the late referee Don Hernandez got me started. He was one of my closest friends, and I miss him a lot. Said, hey, they're starting to do shows. I mean, it was rare that I ever got to do a show so close to my house. I mean, I always had to go from, I traveled all over, up and down California, Arizona. The joke is I've hit every Denny's in California, Arizona you could think of. But it was a treat being able to be so close. And I started going up there. I talked to Charles Gibbs, or should I say Charles Steele, and I was on the very next show.
Well, speaking of Charles Gibbs or Charles Steele, what are your thoughts on the owner of CCW himself?
To be honest with you, I never had any beef with Charles. You know, other guys did. I never really had any beef with Charles. He was always good to me, you know. I even got videotapes that some of the guys didn't get to see. Wrestling videotapes, by the way.
It's good to mention that. Good to clarify. What are your memories of wrestling at the Palace of Pain and at the Bringle Terrace in Vista?
The memories? Man, we had some wars. I'll tell you one of the memories that I always bring up. The Bringle Terrace, they had other events going on, and one day, not only did we have a packed wrestling show, but there was a wedding ceremony, reception, and I was wrestling Alcatraz that night and Cruiser Eddie Williams, and we ended up brawling in that wedding reception, and the bride, everybody loved it in that wedding reception. Even the bride got into it and was cheering Alcatraz on to kick my butt, and handing him stuff to use against me, and it's things like that I remember, or ladder matches with B-Boy and lumberjack matches. It was just that time.
Now, referencing those two guys, B-Boy and Alcatraz, what are the reasons behind primarily being booked against B-Boy and Alcatraz in CCW? In addition to that, I'd like to know what your thoughts are on Alcatraz as a wrestler and opponent, as well as on B-Boy as a wrestler and opponent and a tag team partner.
Well, wrestling against B-Boy, I think at the time, he was this up and coming good guy, and they knew I was a bad guy. I guess you would say bad guy, and they wanted to build up his popularity even a little bit more, and I think promoters thought he could probably learn from me too, even though I beat him every time. But I think I ended up teaching him a lot. And later on, we became tag team partners and even tag team champions. And we were like brothers for a while, And I think it was all a learning experience with him. And then you bring up Alcatraz. To me, he was a great worker. He brought out the best in me. You had to, or you were going to get your butt kicked. And I thought he was a great worker.
One match that stands out to many fans still to this day is the ladder match between yourself and B-Boy on October 2nd, 1999. Tell us about that one.
Ladder match, it wasn't his. They put his cruiserweight title up, but I don't think I could have won that. But I was the champ. It went pretty long, pretty brutal. I mean, next day I felt it. It was the first time I've ever been in a ladder match. But I hear people talk about it still to this day, and it's probably 10, 11 years later, and it's one of my favorite matches of all time.
Now, CCW, of course, is no longer in existence. It folded. For those who are just wondering, CCW, this is one of the original programs for CCW right here. Now, CCW folded. Why do you think it did fold? What are your thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, like I said, I never had any beef with anybody, but I think there was a lot of egos involved, and when you got too many egos involved, you're not going to be able to work or keep anything successful.
In April 2007, SoCal Pro Wrestling opened its doors. Now, you were there, and the show featured the main event of you taking on Alcatraz. What are your thoughts on returning to the ring in such a big event with such a high level of competition when you had been out of the spotlight for so many years? And what prompted this return in the first place?
Well, you know what? I was a little shocked when I was asked to be in the main event because, like you said, I had almost a 3-year retirement. And but you know what's funny is when you have I have a little boy, my little son Jacob, and I used to put him to bed, and I used to tell him that when he grows up, he could be anything that he wanted to be. And sometimes I had that feeling like I was lying to him because I felt like that did I really chase my dreams? I'm telling him to chase his dreams. Did I really chase mine? And when I had the chance to do SoCal Pro Wrestling, I don't want to say it was a godsend, but you know, it was almost like a calling to me. You know, I'm not the most religious person in the world, but it was a calling. And you know, I don't mind saying this, but I found the love again for wrestling when I came back in 2007.
Now, as everyone knows, about 1 year ago, you were a part of the first ever SoCal Pro Wrestling cage match. Your opponent that night, SoCal Crazy. SoCal Crazy defeated you for the title on that evening. Tell us about your thoughts going into that night, coming out of it, your emotions at that time.
Well, at the time, you know, I had never been in a cage all the years I've been wrestling, and I was excited. I was nervous. I was flat out scared, you know, but I figured he was too. And you know, we always watched cage matches when we were kids, and I even mentioned it that if I got the chance, I was going to stand on top of the cage like one of my idols when I was a kid, Jimmy Snuka, and I got the chance to, and I actually jumped off there. It was scary up there, but you know, even though I lost that match, all the stuff that we accomplished in that match, all the stuff we did, I feel like I won in some ways.
Now, as everyone knows, in January at New Year's Retribution, we did see the return of your former manager, TNT, who we had not seen since the previous February at Caged Fury, when, as a result of you losing the title, he was banished from SoCal Pro Wrestling. At the time, what were your thoughts on the return of TNT?
Shocking. He walks out with me, but deep down I thought, do I really need him? You know, I wrestled all these years without him, and I didn't really need him anymore. It was like I don't want to say I grew up, but like I said, I didn't need him or his antics anymore.
Now, later in the night, a shocking turn of events. As you came out to the ring, and well, you know, why don't you tell us about what happened that night?
Earlier that night, I felt there was an injustice in my match, and then Tommy Wilson felt to take it upon himself to give me a verbal lashing, and so later on when I saw SoCal Crazy needing a little bit of help, you know, I think Tommy Wilson as champion is a coward, and I knew deep down if he was champion, he wouldn't give me that title shot. But I knew if SoCal Crazy was, in all the battles we had, I knew deep down he would give me my title shot. And plus, I didn't want to see any injustice that happened to me happen to him. You know, I think if I do things right, I think my future's bright. You know, and I know a lot of people think I'm old, and I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I look in the mirror, I see a little gray here in the beard. You know, I got a bad shoulder. But the one thing I learned, and I heard this quote before, and I don't mean by any pun at all. I heard the last thing to age on somebody is their heart. And right now, I feel good, and I feel better than ever. And I think my future's bright.
Well, Jason, on that note, I want to thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you the best of luck in SoCal Pro Wrestling, and the best of luck in 2010.